Hello, and welcome to Read the Bull, the only podcast dedicated to business and financing books. I'm your host, Stefan and today I'm thrilled to welcome my guest, Todd Finkle. He is the Pigott Professor of Entrepreneurship at Gonzaga University, and he is the author of the book, Warren Buffett, Investor and Entrepreneur. Give it a little plug there. Todd, welcome.
Hey, thanks for having me, Stefan. It's going to be a lot of fun today.
I'm looking forward to it. Thanks so much for joining me. There's a lot I want to get to. Warren Buffett is as I've said before, I've plugged this book on my website, and he's probably, I confidently to say that he's probably the most written about investor. And to just do some very informal research, I looked it up on barnesandnoble.com. And when you type in Warren Buffett's name, you get 265 results, which is just amazing. And now you have a new book in this category, and I think it's a very interesting entrance into that. So I want to ask you about that. So let me start I know you have a connection to Warren, so tell me about your connection and how you got the idea for this book.
I really didn't start thinking about writing the book until about 5 years ago, but I've been involved with Warren since about 2007. And I grew up in Omaha, so that's one thing. So I've got that connection going on. And I went to high school with his son, Peter. And I used to eat lunch with Peter every day and about 10 different buddies of ours. He was a couple of years older than I was. And he was just a normal guy. Nobody knew Buffett back then. Nobody knew that he was. This is in '76.
Okay.
From the early years of after he bought Berkshire Hathaway, and nobody talked about Warren Buffett being this big guy when we were at lunch together every day, and
sure.
And Pete wore ripped up jeans to school every day and a baseball cap, and he was just a normal guy, and he was kind of an artsy fartsy guy.
Okay.
Music and photography, and the head of the yearbook photography staff, and just a really nice guy, really nice person. So that's the real roots behind the book. And, and I know Omaha because I grew up there and everything. And
sure.
And all of Buffett's kids went to high school at Omaha Central, the same high school that Pete and I met at. And his dad went to school there. And Charlie Munger went to school there. And Central High School is the name of the school, has a excellent reputation academically, and especially in math. The math portion, when I was a sophomore, the seniors consistently came in first through third in the country in these math competitions. So, when I talk about, what's in the water in Omaha, why are all these kids so good in math? Well, what's up with that? Why Omaha in the middle of nowhere?
Right.
And only thing I can think of is that, you had great teachers.
Right.
Bright kids, great teachers that really knew how to push you. So anyway, that's kind of the background there. I didn't know Warren back there. My brother David knew Howie, the oldest son, and he played handball over at their house. They have a handball court. I don't know if you knew that.
No.
And see what you can learn in a podcast. And
here we go.
And now I guess there's just a bunch of annual reports that are in the handball court.
Right.
My brother knew him. I interviewed Susie for the book. So I had a connection, Steve Nog, who's my cousin, and Steve went to high school with Susie. And so I was lucky enough to get her, and I can talk about that later, about some of the things I learned
Sure.
About her. I didn't put everything in the book, just a few things.
Right. So tell me what your goal was with the book, because I think first of all it's interesting. You say investor and entrepreneur, and obviously you teach entrepreneurship. So that's your scope, or at least looking at Warren Buffett as an entrepreneur. So what was kind of the goal with the book, was to look a little bit more fully at kind of his career and look at him as an entrepreneur?
I think, one of the challenging parts, I wrote 5 articles before I started to even write the book.
Okay.
And those 5 articles were based on trips that I took with my students to go visit him over that period of time. And that was great. We got a chance to go out to lunch with him and have a Q&A with him for 2.5 hours. And the Q&As are in the book, by the way.
Yeah, they're fascinating.
Yeah, they are fascinating. And you weren't supposed to record them, by the way. So they're based on my notes.
I know.
Yeah, so I wrote like 5 articles, and this goes back to 2009, and then I just finally said, hey, why not write a book? I've got all this information. I've got primary research with, Buffett, Peter, Howie, Susie. Why not go for it?
Yeah.
And so I did. But the problem is that, like you said, there's so many books out there on Warren Buffett. How do you differentiate yourself? You have to think like an entrepreneur.
Okay.
So you look at the industry, and you look at what everybody's done in the industry, and you try and find what your niche can be. How can you differentiate yourself from everybody else so people will want to read your book?
Right.
And so entrepreneurship was one of the things that differentiated me from everybody else, because I do have a Ph.D. in entrepreneurship, and I've been teaching it for 33 years. Yeah. And I can talk about the various aspects of entrepreneurship throughout the book, which is what I did. Yeah. And I even, in chapter 1, I even gave a bonus for those people that want to learn about how to be an entrepreneur, and what motivates entrepreneurs, and what are the things that the most successful entrepreneurs did.
Right.
So if you're interested in entrepreneurship, you've got some added bonus material in there. But I take the reader through his entrepreneurial voyage, all the way from when he was like 4 or 5 years old. He started selling lemonade on his neighbor's driveway. That's the original one. That's the
original. Yeah. And then there was also a family business as well, correct?
Yeah, his grandfather had a store, and even before that, they were farmers, so they were entrepreneurs when they came over. I think from France is where his family came over from.
But then, how'd you get it published? Did you do the traditional, send out proposals to agents, or how did you? Because I should say it's published by Columbia Business School. I know them well; they're a great publisher. So how did you get their attention?
Oh God, that in itself is so entrepreneurial.
Yeah,
and
that's
having
right.
to learn about it's a whole industry.
Yeah.
And as I'm doing it, I'm teaching it to my students. This is what I'm doing this week.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And I can briefly tell you what I did, and hopefully you can learn from it. And I did some other things to differentiate the book besides just entrepreneurship and getting to know them. And I had a chapter in there on his mistakes. And I hadn't seen another book that had a chapter on them. And I had a chapter on, and this was my last chapter I wrote on behavioral biases. And to me, that's the most important chapter in the book.
Okay.
Because Buffett and Munger both say that valuing a company is not the most important thing. It's your behavior and how you act in the markets.
Yeah.
So, back to the publishing, I don't want to get off topic because I know you want to learn about the process. And, it took so long to write this. I wanted this to be my most significant work of my career.
Okay.
So I was not in a hurry to finish this. I was more I wanted to make sure it was quality work, that people would want to read this, and that it would last after I'm gone. So there's that.
Yeah.
And that's one of the reasons why it got published by Columbia. They must have seen something too.
Yeah.
When I did my first draft, I sent it to Buffett and I sent it
Okay.
to Munger because I needed approval to
Yeah.
go ahead and do this. And I sent a box of peanut brittle to both of them because they both, you know, he,
Yeah, we'll talk about that. Yeah. It was C's peanut brittle, I'm imagining, right?
yeah. And I know Warren was probably laughing when he saw that.
Yeah.
And he probably was eating it, that afternoon.
Right.
Um,
With the
and
Diet Coke.
he was nice enough. He didn't read the whole thing. He just said, his eyes are getting weaker. And he read the first chapter and he gave me feedback and he gave me permission to go ahead
Great.
and write the book. And I know him so that he trusts me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, so that was, a major stage.
Sure.
I got through Buffett. He said it's okay to go ahead and write it. All right, now I need to write the book, and try and finish the book and do book proposals to publishers. And you have to do a letter.
Yeah.
What are those query letters? I think, and then you try to get a feel for whether or not the publishers are interested in your book. And I
Right.
tried the top tier
Okay.
first. Again, I'm trying to do something really significant. So why not go for the top tier?
Sure.
And the top tier there's so many books out there. They just said the only way you're going to differentiate yourself is if you get Buffett to write the intro
Mm.
to your book. And even then, they didn't guarantee me that,
Right.
that I would get in with them. But so I tried and I got rejected by Buffett. So,
Yeah.
but at
Yeah.
least I tried,
Sure.
And so the next stage is you go down to the university publishers. I didn't want to go to anybody else. I thought, university press.
Yeah.
And so I sent a copy to Stanford, Columbia, and University of Chicago.
Hmm.
Those three. Stanford rejected me. Columbia picked me up right away.
Okay.
Boom. So,
Yeah. That's
and
great.
a lot of that has to do just with the history of Buffett and Columbia.
Yeah.
And so they told me, um, Brian Smith was his name at Columbia. He's a really good guy. And Miles Thompson is
Yep.
the big guy at Columbia, another really nice guy. And they were both very helpful. And then I got a couple editors that they recommended, and I worked with the editors and kind of rewrote the book and repositioned the book.
Hmm.
Uh, as an academic, we're not used to writing to the masses. This is
Sure.
very unusual for academics to be doing something like I did, because
Yeah.
we don't tend to be rewarded for this. If that makes any sense at all. It doesn't make any sense to me. We write these articles. I don't care anymore. We write these articles that only 5 people in the world read.
Right.
And that's how we get rewarded. And I'm writing for everybody in the world. It's being translated into 5 languages.
Right. Right.
And I just don't get it, Stefan. I don't get it.
Yeah.
We're
Well,
off.
yeah. You ended up at a good home, and again, there is this link with Columbia. So Buffett went to graduate school there and was a mentee of Benjamin Graham at Columbia.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that relationship
Studied
was
under Benjamin Graham, and
yeah.
David Dodd was there when he was there.
Yeah, so some good people to learn from, because and you talk about his kind of views on education. I don't remember the exact quote, but he said, a college degree is valued by 99% of employers. At Berkshire Hathaway, it's valued about 50% or something like that. So he clearly values education, but has kind of a little bit of a skewed view in terms of that. Can you give a little context to that?
Well, I think this goes way back. Buffett started to be a businessman when he was 4 years old.
Yeah.
He didn't want to go to college. His dad forced him to go to college. And he didn't like college. He went to Penn.
Mm-hmm.
He said he knew more than most of the professors that taught him.
Yeah.
So he ended up leaving he wanted to drop out after his first year, and his dad said, "No, you're not
Yeah.
dropping out." So he continued another year, and then he dropped out, and then he went to Nebraska, and he graduated from there while he had 50 people working for him delivering papers. So that's again his entrepreneurial behavior just continues to flow throughout his life.
Yeah.
Even when he was in college, he was doing that.
Yeah. Tell the story about the pinball machines.
The pinball
I love
machines.
that. Yeah.
I think he was 15 and he started a pinball company, and they would buy used pinball machines, the Wilson coin operated company or something like that.
Yeah.
Him and another guy, a partner, and they'd put these used machines in barbershops, and they'd split the money with the barbershop 50-50.
Mm-hmm.
And I think he got that up to 7 different machines, and he was making pretty good money doing that.
Yeah.
And then he ended up selling that to a war veteran.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. The other story I love is he bought 40 acres of farmland at age 15 and then leased it out. Could you imagine? I'm just imagining leasing the farmland and then just meeting a 15-year-old Warren Buffett and being like, "This is your landlord."
And he still talks about farmland to this day in meetings and interviews. Would you sell your farmland? Do you look at the prices every day of your farmland?
Right. Yeah.
He's funny with that. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. His whole childhood was just a plethora of entrepreneurial behavior. It was incredible. And I like to go back. I'll kind of tell you what I think is what initiated all this.
Yeah.
Was when he was 1.5 or so. He was born in 1930.
Mm-hmm.
Great Depression hits. He's in the middle of the Great Depression, although he's only 1.5, 2 years old. His dad loses all of his money, the family's money. Mm-hmm. He is unemployed, can't take care of his family. Goes to his father to try and get a job at the grocery store. Yeah. And his father said, "We can't afford to hire you, but we can give you food on credit." Mm-hmm. And so that's kind of what he did. But in the meantime, the whole family is just chaos is occurring. And the family and his mother already has mental health issues. Yeah. Her whole side of the family had them. And there's a debate as whether she was bipolar or she had headaches or whatever. It doesn't really matter, but it just really screwed up the family, and she was abusing her kids. Mm-hmm. And Warren, Warren took abuse from her as well. And that really didn't come out a lot until he did an interview on one of his series, Becoming Warren Buffett. He talked about it more. And so I really think that put the stick behind him to get him going when his mom's telling him that he's worthless and he's a little kid. That's enough to get him going, and the family had no money. Yeah. I call it the poverty effect, and nobody talks about this. That's something new that I talk about is, when you have nothing, you've got this, oh God, that it makes you feel worthless. Yeah. I'm wondering if he still doesn't have some kind of effects from that today, because he just doesn't stop.
Yeah, as a motivating factor. Yeah, I think, especially as you said, it's something that affects you that greatly at such a young age. I mean, unless you're going through years and years in therapy, I'm sure it sticks with you. How could it not?
And it just wasn't at that age. He had problems with his mom his whole life. Hmm. I bet he was in therapy. What do you think?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't know if I could see him in therapy. I'll ask you that. You're the expert. I don't know if I could see him on a therapist's couch. I don't know.
He's never talked about it, but I could see him doing it.
All right. Well, now you have a question to ask him at the Berkshire Hathaway meeting. So I want to jump ahead a little bit, because you can't talk about Warren Buffett without his partner, Charlie Munger, right?
Yeah, I've got a whole chapter devoted to that. I had problems with Charlie because there's so much on Charlie that I wanted to talk about.
give our listeners kind of the just quick skinny on Munger.
I think that those two are just like two peas in a pod, and they met in 1959 at a dinner when Buffett went back for his father's funeral in Omaha, and they met. They had a great time at the dinner, and they were rolling on the ground with laughter.
Yeah.
So he kind of found, a great friend, but they still they kept in touch. But he didn't work with Warren. I think he didn't officially join Berkshire Hathaway until the 70s. Charlie was a successful investor himself.
Yeah.
He had a fund and that returned about 20% a year for 13 years versus the S&P, which is about 5% a year. Yeah. So he really outdid that. And he came on, it was his idea to buy See's Candy. That was his big deal.
Yeah.
See's was one of their best purchases ever. They bought See's Candy at $25 million, and the cash flow from that is well over $2 billion.
That's unbelievable. And this is the candy that you usually see in, like the little box candy, right? And they also make the peanut brittle. But yeah, I know it's a case study you talk about in the book, and I want to talk about some others. But yeah, the $25 million investment has turned into
Charlie. And Buffett was kind of on the edge on that one, but Charlie pushed him over the edge. Yeah. Buffett thought 25 million was too much.
That's well, okay. So before we jump to the case studies, because I think that there's some really interesting ones, and it shows again, his entrepreneurial roots. Because I think people think of more of it as an investor, but because of these entrepreneurial roots, he's able to really identify good companies. And we'll talk about the difference that he learned from Benjamin Graham to how he adapted his own style. But one thing, and maybe I just knew this, or I didn't know. I guess I didn't know this, but Berkshire Hathaway was originally a Massachusetts textile company, and Berkshire Hathaway, and it's actually one of his. I think you put it in as one of his bad investments, and if it weren't for 12.5 cents, it may never have happened.
You're absolutely correct. Yeah, he screwed up, and he admits it that he screwed up on it. He says. Yeah. Was his biggest mistake, and in today's dollars it's like 300-400 billion that he lost because he purchased Berkshire Hathaway.
300 billion?
300 to 400 billion.
Okay, can you explain that a little bit? How that's it's no small. That's not 12.5 cents.
It's a matter of what I think it's more so. Besides them losing money for all those years, and it went bust in 1985, but they were having problems for a long time. And Buffett, being Buffett, he didn't want to lay anybody off.
Yeah,
you see that as a behavior pattern with him throughout his entire career. He tries to help people. He doesn't want to lay them off, and he did that with Berkshire Hathaway too. So just the money that he lost there, he could have used on other investments.
Yeah. So I teed you up. What was why was the 12.5 cents the sticking point here?
Well, the guy that he was buying the shares from promised him a certain price orally, and then when the written contract came, it was 12.5 cents less than what it was supposed to be. And so he just got really mad. And this was 5 days after his father passed away. Mm-hmm. So he wasn't really thinking rationally. And he was pissed.
Yeah.
And he just bought the company. He was going to show this guy, hey, you can't go around screwing people. Yeah. I'm going to show you.
Yeah.
I'm sure that's what he was thinking. Yeah. And it was an irrational decision. It was the wrong decision. Now he talks about that today. Right. And I'm sure he learned a lot from that.
But it wouldn't have been Berkshire Hathaway if that didn't happen. So it's a little interesting. But
Would have been
yeah,
See's Candy.
it would have been. That's funny. I like that. Yeah, I mean, you don't expect Warren Buffett to act irrationally and on emotion, but there he did. So, and it was one of his worst investments, but that's how Berkshire Hathaway became what it is. So, I want to get into, how you got invited to, bring your classes to Warren Buffett, because I think that's a great story, particularly the one. So the first time I think you said was 2009, right? And the one in 2011 I want to get to because I think that's really creative how you got invited back. Before Gonzaga, you were teaching where?
I was at the University of Akron.
Okay.
And when I was there, we had a nonprofit that we started with 6 other universities. And we were doing a lot of really great stuff. We were getting grants from foundations to try and instill entrepreneurship within the region, because Northeast Ohio is not a great place for entrepreneurship. And so we were trying to lay the roots for students and get them to stay there. And so I was told by my cousin, Steve Nog, who runs iGo Van in Omaha. And he said, "Hey, Todd, you need to bring your students out here to Omaha because Warren's inviting schools to come visit him." And I thought, "Oh, what a great idea, Steve. Thanks." Yeah. So I contact them and I applied. I wrote a 1-page letter. And in the letter, I just said all the great things we're doing with this nonprofit foundation. And we're helping people and doing a lot entrepreneurial wise, and he loves entrepreneurship. I know he does, but nobody really talks about it because he is an entrepreneur. And I went to high school with your kid, Peter. I thought that would help. I got rejected right away. He didn't care about me going to high school with his kid. The secretary said, "There are so many people that want to go see Warren Buffett. Don't even bother to put your name on the list." So I was really frustrated, and I didn't put my name on the list. But I really hit my head against the wall, thinking I should have put my name on the list. I should have put my name on the list. Why didn't I put my name on the list? And so I still wanted to learn as much as I could about Warren Buffett, because he's the J.P. Morgan of our generation. And the secret sauce. I wanted to learn about his secret sauce. And I've got 3 chapters in the book on that. What exactly does he do? How does he value companies? That really drove me. So I wrote a case study on it, and I got it published. And after I got it published, over a 2-year period this took, during the Great Recession, I thought, I had this epiphany, hey, why don't I just send it to Warren Buffett and see if he'll invite us? So I did, and within 5 days, I got a letter back from him inviting us to Omaha in November. And we went to Omaha to visit him, and it was the same day that they bought BNSF. And all these photographers were following us around all day long. And he didn't care about them. He didn't want to talk to them. He wanted to spend the time with the students. He loves teaching. Great.
Yeah.
He loves kids. He wants to help people. I think at his shareholder meetings, it's him teaching us.
Yeah.
Yeah. When he writes his shareholder letters, he writes very simplistically so everybody can understand what he's saying.
Yeah, he's given us a lot of great content to learn from, that's for sure. Very generous with his time, and obviously he's been generous with you and your students. So a couple of years later, which was not that long after, you got invited back, and you had your students do something creative to get that invite.
Yeah. So, well, before that, so we went. I went on the market immediately after that, and I got in this endowed chair at Gonzaga University, and the basketball team really helped out on that one. It really helps. I have season tickets to the game, and a lot of the basketball players, they're my advisees. So that makes it kind of fun.
Yeah.
Corey Kispert, Killian Tilly, Brandon Clark, all
Oh,
those
that's great.
guys,
Yeah.
they were all under me. So
Yeah.
that was fun. Um, but so when I get to Gonzaga, I want to do it again. So I write Buffett a letter like I
Hmm.
did the first time. And of course, I got rejected again because
Right.
there was no differentiating factor.
There you go. Okay.
He wants to see something unique
Right.
and innovative and creative to get invited. So I'm thinking, well, what can I do? And so I came up with this idea of a project with my entrepreneurship students where they have to create a product for half their grade to get invited to go visit Warren Buffett.
I didn't know it was for half their grade. That's a lot of pressure.
Yeah, it was. And I didn't have any restrictions at all. They could do whatever they wanted to do. I didn't care what they did.
Yeah.
Um, as long as it was legal and ethical,
Right.
that's all that mattered to me. And I just let them run. And that's what
Okay.
you want to do with entrepreneurs.
Yep.
Just let them run. And one of the ideas was fabulous, just fabulous. And I think that idea alone got us invited again because
Mm.
it was related. It was a Warren Buffett pinball machine.
Okay.
And so they were going to go ahead and design this Warren Buffett pinball machine and get pictures of him on the pinball machine. And
Yeah.
then they were going to send it to Warren Buffett.
I love that.
And
Right.
he would have put that in his office. I'll
Oh,
guarantee you that.
absolutely. Yeah.
And, but the problem was money.
Yeah.
And the semester was really short.
Yeah.
But so they ended up sending him the design for a Warren Buffett pinball machine. One of the people on the group was an engineer.
Okay.
And the lady that came up with the idea was a religious studies student and entrepreneurship minor.
Wow. That's fantastic. Yeah, so I could totally see that. You have the Seas candies and some of the other investments on the bumpers and things like that, and you get bonus points. I mean, that's a great idea. And yeah, if it hasn't been done already, you should still try to do that. I love that.
So we got invited. So then, and we went back there and did our thing again. Went out to lunch with Buffett. Had our picture taken with him. Had a 2.5-hour Q&A.
Yeah.
Saw a couple of subsidiaries.
So, and you talk about every time you go out there with your students, and you've been out quite a few times, you say your students always focus on one thing. They love learning about the businesses, everything, but what do they take away that they always say is the most interesting part of the conversation?
Almost always they say how to live a better life.
Yeah.
That was the biggest thing that they took away. And I sprinkle that throughout the book. I have a whole chapter on it in the book. I talk about Dale Carnegie. That's the only degree that he has up in his office is from the $100 class from Dale Carnegie. And he doesn't even have his Columbia degree up on his wall. Let me tell you something that's really interesting. The first time that we went to go visit him, I was sitting in the front row with a couple students. He's talking to us and everything, and in his corporate headquarters. And he's looking right at me when he says this. He goes, not Todd. He goes, the most successful business people that I have met in my life are the ones with the most business experience that think way outside of the box, not necessarily people with, these big shot degrees. and hence that goes back to what you were saying earlier about, he puts 50% on education.
Yeah. Do you know if you hold the record for the professor who's taken their students the most times? Because you've been how many times?
Yeah, I took them again in 2017. And I also took 3 groups of students. Our board regent saw what I was doing, and I went out to lunch with him, and he invited me and 6 students to go to Omaha on his private jet.
Wow.
We did that 3 times. It was like being a rock star.
Yeah.
Can you imagine being 21 and doing that?
No, that's an amazing experience. Good, good for you. And I'm sure your students, probably you get a lot of students wanting to take your class just on those stories alone. That's great.
I did have some
No,
kids that did that.
what a great experience though. That's fantastic. And I think you said in the book the last time you went was the last time he did it, because he's now was in 90s, but then he was 2018 was the last time he did it, and he was 88. So
Yeah, and even at the meetings, I'm sure that you have probably noticed there's a lot more. He's thinking more,
right.
and but that's okay. I still want to go. He's Warren
Yeah.
Buffett.
So let's talk about that. I'll let you do it. But for people who haven't, some listeners will know the environment. But he's a modest guy. He lives. I think you said it in the book. He lives in the same house. Probably had some renovations done, but lives in the same house that he bought. And I don't know what year, but he drives a modest car. But the shareholders meeting is a little bit of a different animal. So let me ask you about that environment and talk about what you're looking forward to out there.
There are several words that could describe it. I said carnival earlier.
Yeah.
Could be one. A cult could be another one.
Right.
Similar to a Rolling Stones concert, because they all sleep outside to try and get the best seats that they can at it. And I'm
That's
guilty
amazing.
of that myself.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's just a lot of fun, and these people could watch it streaming, but they still go to the meeting. There'll be 35 to 40,000 people there.
That's
it
amazing.
has gone up since I first started going to it. The number of people, and people from all over the world are there.
Yeah. So when was the first time that you went?
2009.
2009. Okay.
Right after March of 2009 was when the market bottomed in the Great Recession, and that place, you could hear a pin drop.
Yeah, I can imagine. Yeah, what was that compared to, that was your first time, but so you've had other
total fear.
Yeah.
People were just afraid. They had no idea what was going to happen.
But Buffett was kind of, as I generally remember his comments, and I think you do highlight some of he was a voice of reason during the crisis.
I remember him telling us, and he normally doesn't do this, this was rare, that somebody asked him a question about what to buy. and he said, Wells Fargo. And so I went and looked at what Wells Fargo was selling for. It was at 19. And on Monday, it was at 24.
Yeah, we know he did a lot of buying out of the crisis. I know Goldman Sachs and some others that he invested in. So, okay, what are you looking forward to this year? And then I want to talk about some of his investments and deals. But what are you looking forward to this year? And you're going to be a featured author, right, at the event?
I've got 3 speaking engagements, 2 before and 1 right after the meeting.
Great.
And I've got a book signing while I'm there at the airport as everybody's leaving. I'm hoping to grab them. Hey, don't forget about this book. You can read it on the way home. So I got a lot going on, but it's all fun.
Yeah.
So the hard part is done. Writing the book is difficult.
Yeah.
Getting it published. But this is the fun part, is sharing the information with everybody.
Yes.
So that'll be fun. Going to the meeting is always a lot of fun. Just listening to those guys. They're comedians in a way.
Yeah, they can have their own act, right? They just get up there and they talk for hours and they answer questions, and they've known each other, how for decades. And they just riff off each other. They're like the balcony Muppets in a way. They just kind of like riff off each other and have a good time.
Charlie's hilarious. Charlie is the show, and he doesn't say very much, but everybody just, they love him. They boast with laughter when they hear, and he doesn't say very much. They're little quips. Yeah.
So I want to just pivot back because, and the fact that they even put out a reading list, and you talk in the book, I mean, and I have to ask you this. I was telling my colleague this, and we just kind of scratch our heads because reading is really just part of the Berkshire Hathaway culture. And you say Buffett and Munger read 500 pages a day. Where do they find the time?
That's what they recommend that we do too.
Yeah.
If you want to learn about investments, I don't think I'm listening to reading 500 pages a day. I'm not so sure that those guys still do 500 pages a day at 92 and 99.
Yeah,
I
I'm not
wouldn't put a
sure, but
lot of credence in that right now, but when he was younger, certainly, yeah.
yeah,
I
they were
remember
voracious readers.
Susie, when I talked to her, said, he was always reading all the time,
Yeah.
and he would be there, but he wouldn't be there. Like he would be
Right.
there in physical presence, but he wasn't there.
Yeah, and I got to say, you obviously know Warren Buffett. You're obviously a fan, but you present some things in in I think an objective light, and you talk about how he was, I don't say absentee, but how he wasn't the most maybe attentive parent. And then you obviously include a section about his investment mistakes. So, if people think this is going to be just a book gushing over Warren, there are those parts, but it is, a very objective look in a lot of ways too.
And I tried not to get into, unlike other authors, his personal life
Yeah.
and the mistakes that he's made there, because we've all made mistakes.
Right. So I want to ask you what your favorite case study is. We talked a little about See's Candy, so we could talk about that. But what's your favorite Buffett investment story?
That's interesting. I would say Nebraska Furniture Mart.
Okay.
And I'll just briefly tell you the story behind that. Nebraska
Sure.
Furniture Mart was founded by Mrs. B. Blumpkin, and she moved. She's from Belarus originally, and her family had a grocery store over there. And at the age of 6, I believe she was working at the store. At age 10, she had 10 or 6 people working for her
Mm-hmm.
at the grocery store. She never went to school, no
Okay.
education. And then her family started to move to the United States, and she came over through Siberia and the railroad. And at 23, she came over to the United States. They ended up in Nebraska. They got married. She got married at 23, had 4 kids. She started to sell used clothing
Mm-hmm.
um, at her husband's, what are those called? Not a hawk shop, but
Like a secondhand store or
yeah,
okay, like
something like
yeah.
that. And in the basement, that's how she started, in the basement of that store.
Mm-hmm.
And she grew it to Nebraska Furniture Mart from there, which
Mm-hmm.
was the largest private furniture store in the country.
Wow.
And this is all in Little Omaha,
Yeah.
and from somebody who didn't know how to write or speak English. She learned
Amazing.
it from her kids when they went to school, and they came home and they taught her English and how to write. What a great story.
Yeah.
And this goes hand in hand with what Buffett says about business,
Yeah.
the experience in doing business versus education,
Right.
and anyway, long story short, she ends up selling the store for 55 million to Warren. I
Wow.
think that was in the 80s, on a
Mm-hmm.
handshake and 2 pieces of paper. That was it.
I thought you were going to say 2 pieces of peanut brittle.
And she, I can't remember how old she was, but she ended up opening up another store,
Yeah.
and it competed with her old store.
Oh my God.
And she was like in her 90s when she did that.
Yeah. Well, yeah, you talk about how, Warren likes to invest in companies that, that he understands, and he wasn't a big tech guy, but, he's also brought in some younger people, and so that started to shift. So he admits he's late on Apple, but it's become I know they've now reduced their stake a little bit, but it was still one of their biggest investments for a while.
Yeah, I don't think he was the guy that originated that. That was either Ted or Todd.
Yeah.
They started to buy Apple in 2016, would be my
Yeah.
guess.
Okay.
And then through the scuttlebutt methodology, uh,
Yeah.
Phil Fisher's scuttlebutt, he's observing what people are doing with products. And
Right.
he's at Dairy Queen, and he sees all of his grandkids not talking to each other, but sending each other text
Right.
on their iPhones. He goes, man, that's it. That's a
Yeah.
winner.
Yeah.
And that's what he talks about, how
Yeah.
he really became knowledgeable about Apple and went full force into Apple.
Yeah.
And Charlie said that if we could, we'd buy all of Apple.
Right. So let's bring it back to entrepreneurship, and I think that's a good way, because what maybe a lot of people don't know is how many companies are under the Berkshire Hathaway under the banner, because they buy a lot of companies outright. And again, like, this is where his entrepreneurial roots probably come in. He sees companies, and he's not just taking a stake; he buys them outright or buys majority share. So how many companies does Berkshire Hathaway own?
62, not
62.
counting the stock investments.
Right.
I think his stock is somewhere around 350 billion, and
Yeah.
that's pretty close to what his companies do too.
And he employs, probably hundreds of thousands of people total.
360,000 people,
Yeah.
and his corporate headquarters has 26 people at it.
That's it. 26.
So that you're talking about entrepreneurship, all right?
Right. Yeah.
That's entrepreneurship to me. You don't see that with any company.
Right.
He has decentralized his structure, and he has a lot of trust that's involved with his managers.
Yeah.
He gives
Right.
them freedom and independence, and that's what very entrepreneurial. He realizes what entrepreneurs need to function.
And
But
you told them,
he still gets the monthly reports from them. So
sure. Yeah, let's talk about really quick. We're talking about reading. What's his process involves reading? Was it 10 years of financial reports on any company he's considering?
I mean, he could be following a company for 25 years.
Yeah.
But typically he likes to look at 10 years. Yeah.
And yeah. And I like the way you frame it, because people think like, he's a long-term investor, but he again, he's following these companies, reading about them. But then if he sees the opportunity, he acts quickly, so he can be nimble. But he says, in terms of the investing, he lets that take time.
Yeah. Yeah. When somebody comes to him, he says this, when somebody comes to him and wants to sell their company, it takes him like less than a minute to make a decision, and he knows what it's worth within a minute.
Yeah. That's unbelievable. And something you write too is interesting, because he says he doesn't like companies where the founder is, considered the kind of the centerpiece of the company. But really, Berkshire Hathaway, he's, yes, Charlie's there too, but he's kind of the center. And so he kind of has the problem here that he identifies with a lot of companies, but he has addressed the succession issue. So who is going to be who's going to lead Berkshire Hathaway for the next generation?
Yeah, I wonder what's going to happen when he passes away.
Yeah.
That's a great question. But he does have it lined up. Ajit Jain is in charge of insurance. Greg Abel, that's it. He's going to be the guy. And he's also going to be at the meeting answering questions as well. And then you have the two co-CIOs. So Ted and Todd, you got 4 people that are going to be replacing him.
Yeah.
4 people, doing 4 jobs for one Warren Buffett. Is there an equation for that? A math equation?
Maybe you could come up with one. Yeah. Well, that's great. We have just a couple minutes left, so I thought I'd do something kind of fun if you're into it. I'm going to read you. How good do you know Buffett quotes?
Pretty well.
All right, we'll just do this real quick. If it doesn't work, we'll edit it out. But I'm going to read you a couple of quotes. You tell me if it was Warren Buffett or not. You ready? We'll just do a couple. Investing is not nearly as difficult as it looks. Successful investing involves doing a few things right and avoiding serious mistakes.
Buffett.
No.
No?
I tripped you up already. It sounds like, well, it's Jack Bogle, John Bogle.
All
Vanguard
right.
founder, who's a pretty close, sorry, I know, I tricked you right away.
Buffett was Bogle.
Yeah, they're very close. All right, so I'll just read you a couple because, I'm sure you know all these. And okay, so risk comes from not knowing what you are doing.
But that's Buffett.
Yeah, that's a great quote. It all goes to his, study. Never invest in a business you can't understand.
That's Buffett.
Yeah. So, you talked about like all these great things he's contributed to our learning, and they're great quotes. So I want to end because, I mentioned at the beginning, there are like 265 results you get when you Google Warren Buffett on barnesandnoble.com. I tried to look at other top investors, and there's no one that comes close. So we know Benjamin Graham was, his mentor. You get 78 results with Benjamin Graham. You get 58 with Peter Lynch. We mentioned Jack Bogle, 38. Howard Marks, 18. So just the wisdom that he's departed. And again, people write about his wisdom. You talked about how students like his life advice, and there are books about that. There are 3 children's books. So he has 3 children's books, and not by him, but about him. And even a book called The Evangelization of Warren Buffett by Mother Mary, by his sister. That's great. So Todd, that's your time on Read the Bull. Anything else you want to plug? I really appreciate the time. And again, it's Warren Buffett, Investor and Entrepreneur. It's a fantastic read, and it's snappy. You got a lot of great stuff in the indices as well, including some of the case studies and a lot of great stuff. So anything else going on?
One quote that he said to us when we went to go visit him that really kind of stood out, and I wish I knew when I was 21, like the students learned from him, was the most important decision that you'll make in your life is who you marry. So ponder that, everybody.
I will. I'll have to tell my wife that, and obviously I'll tell her I made the right decision. Well, Todd, that's your time on Read the Bull. Thank you so much. Good luck with the book, and thank you very much.
Thanks for having me, Stefan. It was a lot of fun.
It was great. Thank you, Todd.
Bye-bye.